Hello. Ready for more Prthu? More Bhagavatam, back with the Prthu story. So now we're in a new mode. So I translated a bit this week, and now I'm going to share that with you. So I think what I'll do is just read you the whole thing, and then go back and go bit by bit and talk about some of the sections, and depending on how much time it takes, go into more or less detail. Let's see how this goes. So we're up to chapter 23 now, in the fourth division of the Bhagavatam. And this is about Prithu's final days. So just to recap, we learned how Prithu was created from Vena. And then we heard the story of how he resolved the famine that resulted from Vena. Then we heard about how he performed his coronation and got involved with Indra. Indra was trying to interrupt that. Then we heard about, at the end of the coronation, Vishnu asked him to teach the citizens spiritual things as well as regular things. So after the coronation ceremony, we heard about how he was what he was telling the citizens. And then during that story, we saw Sanat Kumar and the four Kumars came to meet him. And then that's where it ended, right? After the Kumars gave Prthu answer to Prithu's question. That's where we ended. So now we're at the end. We're coming to the end of the Prithu story. Prithu fulfilled the wishes of his master by protecting the people and all living creatures, fostering tremendous economic growth, and upholding good moral principles. But once he saw that he was becoming old, he left his weeping daughter, which is the earth, and crying citizens in the care of his sons, and went alone with his wife into the rugged forests, for he was self-controlled and self-aware. He had two objectives. One, to teach his citizens how to end their lives in the best way possible, and two, to ensure he achieved his own cherished objective. There in the forest, he deeply understood the sincere rules of the forest dwellers and began to practice fierce austerity, as enthusiastically as he had formerly ruled his kingdom. Like his ancestor Dhruva, for a few weeks he ate only raw roots, tubers, fruits, and leaves. Then he drank only water, and finally he ingested only air. He slept out in the open on the bare earth. During the summer, he silently sat beneath the sun. A lot of S's. During the summer, he silently sat beneath the sun in the middle of 4 fires. During monsoon, he stayed outside in the rains. And during winter, he stayed in the water up to his neck. Desiring to achieve Krishna, he did his austerities to the utmost extreme. Tolerance, brevity of speech, restraint, reversing the flow of reproductive energy, and breath control. Perfecting these practices gradually made him very carefree and desireless, which destroyed any need for activity. The breath control stopped the normal outward flow of energy, unbinding him from sensual absorption. So that's what I translated this week. Let's go back and talk about some of the details. Hey, what's this? Oh, yeah. So, first details, there's still a tiny little bit of description of how he was ruling the kingdom. Prthu fulfilled all the wishes of his master by protecting the people and all living creatures, fostering tremendous economic growth, and upholding good moral principles. So there's still a little bit of detail about how a ruler should rule. So let's look at some of the salient points in this description. First of all, every master is a servant. Every leader is a follower. If there's a master that's not a servant, that person is not a master. They're totally in ignorance. If there's a leader who's not a follower, then that person you shouldn't be following that person. So Prithu, the emperor, has a master, Vishnu. And his activities as an emperor, therefore, aren't exploitive, but they're in a mood of a servant. When a leader feels that he doesn't have a master, then his activities become exploitive. He uses people for his own benefit. Why not? That's what it should be. That's what Vena was saying. I'm the top of the food chain. I'm the top of the pyramid. Everything should be for me. When the leader is cognizant of the fact that he or she has a master, then they don't behave in that way. They behave to benefit the master. So in this way, you can be in any role in the world, even roles which are typically associated with ego, where you use your ego and you use your power. But you can do it in the mood of service and humility. So this emperor has great humility. He's acting only as a servant of his master. That's the first point. Prthu fulfilled the wishes of his master by doing what? So the next three things are the essentials of what a leader should do for the followers, what a king should do for this kingdom, etc. What a manager should do for the company, what a boss should do for the company. First thing is to protect the people that are under you. And it doesn't just include people, it's all living creatures. That's why when you have unrestricted capitalism and you just want to improve your, what do they call those things, like stock market growth and all this and that number, Dow Jones Industrial Average, you just want to increase that stuff. How do you do it? You get out of the Paris Agreement. You stop making people care about the coal emissions. What's that stuff? We want money. We want to make money. That stuff makes our life more expensive. Get rid of that. Use the cheapest stuff possible. Make the most money possible. But then you destroy the prosperity, the future of your citizens by creating an unhealthy environment, and you wreck the earth, the forests, etc. So the first responsibility for a leader is to make sure that whatever else they do, it's healthy and protective and not destructive. Whatever else they might accomplish, if they accomplish it at the expense of somebody else's health or integrity or something, it's not an accomplishment. It's a failure. So the first thing that's remarkable about Prithu is that he protected. He was a protector. And not just of his own group. America first. Fuck France. That's no spiritualist is going to think that way. The spiritualist is not just focused on themselves and their own tribe. The spiritualist is focused on how they're connected to everything. And therefore their own self-interest it matters what France is doing. It matters what the next town over is like. It matters what your neighbor is like. It matters what your spouse feels like. Because of all these people are connected to you. It's just an intelligent selfishness rather than a barbaric or stupid selfishness. So they protect people, and all living creatures. And the second thing fosters tremendous economic growth. This is based on the first thing. The first thing is protecting everybody, making sure everything is cool. And then on top of that, you're able to make the economy increase. People get more wealth. There's no poverty. There's no famine. People are opulent. People are getting more clothes. People are getting more food. People are getting better land, better food, better stuff, better recreation, better entertainment. So Prthu was able to increase the economy without destroying people and the environment. And finally, the third thing is to uphold good moral principles. Uphold good moral principles is basically done by demonstrating good moral principles. That's why if the president doesn't wear a mask, then your whole country has 200,000 coronavirus cases per day. Because the behavior of the leader is going to be emulated or used as an excuse for the behavior of the followers. So if the leader knows morality and has integrity, then 80% of the followers, 80% of the behavior of 80% of the followers is going to be moral, even without them having to independently figure out what's moral and what's not moral, just because the nature of a follower is to emulate the leader. So when you're in a position of leadership, you have to always think about the integrity of whatever it is that you're doing. Would you want what you're doing to be plastered all over the internet? Would you feel embarrassed if it was, or would you be able to stand up for it and say and own it? If it's something you'd feel embarrassed about, you better not be doing it if you're a leader. Okay, so that's the first sentence only. Very interesting stuff. I see that there's questions, and I'll definitely come back to the questions, so don't shy away from typing them in. So he did all this great stuff for his kingdom, but once he saw that he was becoming old, he switched gears. Because once you become old, then your Rajaguna phase of life, your productive phase of life is ending. You have kind of three phases of life. The first phase of life is where you learn and prepare. The second phase of life is where you do and achieve. And the third phase of life is where you wind down. And you learn and prepare for the next iteration. So he sees that he's entering into that third phase. So he says, it's time for me to retire from my doing and achieving and doing all this stuff in the world. So what does he do? He leaves his job. What does that make everybody do? Cry, because they love him. He's such a good person. Who starts crying the most? His daughter. You remember who his daughter is? His daughter is the earth. Remember, after he had that whole episode with the earth, by the end of the story, he felt so much love for her, and specifically he felt like fatherly love, and she felt like she was his daughter. So she became like his daughter. She's crying the most because the earth is really at the mercy of the humans, and then the kings are the ones who direct the activity of humans. So the earth is really sensitive to who the leaders are. And when good leaders come in, the earth can relax. And when bad leaders come in, the earth gets really, really nervous. So when Prithu is leaving office, the earth starts to cry. But he put his sons in charge. So she has a little bit of hope. But still, the emotion for him in particular, leaving And then all of his citizens is the same thing. The citizens are they're at the mercy of the king, the ruler, the person who takes care of them. The person who takes care of you is leaving. You start to cry. He puts you in charge of somebody else to take care of you, and that a person is good too, but still you feel sad about this person that you love is leaving. So everybody's crying, but he fulfills his responsibility. But the crying doesn't stop him from doing what he knows is right to do. That's called moral behavior. Emotions don't stop us from making intelligent decisions. That's a really important thing to realize. That the emotions don't have to be suppressed. They can be expressed and felt, but they have to be kept in a separate realm from the part of your inner self that makes your decisions and commitments. The decisions and commitments have to be based on Mercury, Buddhi, intelligence, and the feelings and the emotions have to be based on the moon, mind. So he went out to the forest after putting his sons in charge of everything. He went alone with his wife. That's an interesting way of phrasing something, because the spouse is not a separate person from you. So he went alone, but not without his wife. Nobody else, just his wife. This is, by the way, the practice. So by this point, you know that there's 4 varnas, or 4 basic types of people. 4 basic types of people, which results in 4 basic types of careers. There's the Shudra, who's an employee, just rank and file employee, most people. Then there's the Vaishya, who's the employer. Then there's the Kshatriya, who's the governor and the ruler. And basically they most directly govern and rule the employers, the business owners. And then above all 3 of them, there's the Brahmana, the person that understands truth. And they guide the leaders. So you know that. But now, in addition to 4 varnas, there's also 4 ashrams. That each one of the varnas passes through as they go through their life. So basically, there's the first portion of life, second portion of life, third and fourth, according to these ashrams. The first portion of life is the student portion. The second is that, like the regular portion where you're living in a home and doing things normal, generating resources. Third portion is retirement, and the fourth portion is the end. So the third portion is called Vanaprastha, where you start to live in a forest. Vanaprastha, you start to live in the forest. And Vanaprastha, there's no separation between husband and wife. They're still together. At the 4th phase, the husband and wife even separate. But in the 3rd phase, they still stay together. So he demonstrated that. By the way, my wife says it's going to be a very cold winter. And we'll see, because it's pretty darn cold already. I probably should have turned on the heat. So if you see me like doing weird things, it's because I'm cold. Man, when you go slow, it really takes a long time, right? He went alone with his wife into the rugged forest where he was self-controlled and self-aware. He had 2 objectives. Yeah, okay, that's obvious. He has one objective for himself, and the other one is for the people, for others. There's 2 reasons why he went to the forest. One is his own reason, and one is for other people, for himself and for other people. For himself, he wants to make sure that he gets his spiritual objective, which he really wants. And you know what that is. You remember what that is? That has to do with becoming just like Lakshmi. And the other objective for other people is to show people how to do Vanaprastha, to show people how to go into the later phase of life. Then it says when he went to the forest, the first thing he did was deeply understand the sincere rules of the forest dwellers. This is really interesting. So before trying to practice anything, he just observed. How do these vanaprasthas, how do these people who are beginning to dwell in the forest, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? And it's interesting that they're described as the sincere rules. The rules that aren't showy, the ones that are really doing it for the true reason and in the true way. So, first thing he did was understood what they're doing, and then he began to practice it. And it says that he practiced it fiercely. He is an emperor, a warrior, so he's not going to do things placidly or, right? He's going to do things fiercely. As enthusiastically as he had formerly ruled his kingdom. So this also shows you that to him, in his mind, it's the same thing. Why was he ruling his kingdom? For the same two reasons. To ensure that he achieved his cherished objective and to teach people how to live. Now that he's going to the forest, why is he doing that? To ensure that he achieves his objective and to teach people how to live. So he engages in both the activities with the same enthusiasm because basically, as far as he's concerned, they're the same activity. Then his practice, it says that it's like Dhruva's, his ancestor. Remember Dhruva did, first he first just ate some fruits and then he just, etc., just drank and then he just breathed. Prthu did the same thing. Then it's explaining his austerities. He slept out in the open on the bare earth. When you're dealing with the responsibilities of life, this is important actually. When you're dealing with the responsibilities of life, like having a kid, taking care of the kid, or having a spouse, taking care of the spouse, taking care of your neighborhood, etc., that is your austerity. You don't need to sleep on the ground. You don't need to sit in the middle of the sun, and in the middle of fires in the sun, because your austerity is dealing with paying the bills, teaching these people things, helping these people be happy and healthy and figure out their problems. That is your austerity. So you shouldn't imitate somebody else's austerities. Focus on your austerities. Sleep on a comfortable bed because you're going to need that. Because you have other austerities to do. But once you don't have those things anymore, your kids are grown up, your responsibilities are finished, then you shouldn't keep sleeping on a comfortable bed and eating, high protein meals and stuff. Now, you should have that same spirit of self-sacrifice, but now it's translated into different kinds of austerities. So now that he has no kingdoms to rule, he sleeps out in the open on the bare earth. No bedroom, no bed, no pillow. During the summer, no air conditioning. In fact, he makes it hotter for himself so that he can learn how to tolerate the heat. During the monsoon, no umbrella. He stays underneath the rain so he can learn how to tolerate being wet. During the winter, he stays in the river or the lake. Why? So he can learn how to tolerate being cold. Now this next statement is actually the one that I thought we would spend the most time on. The next statement summarizes the austerities that he's doing. So it said, desiring to achieve Krishna, he did his austerities to the utmost. Why Krishna? Because he wants to be like Lakshmi, right? So he adores Krishna. Not, if you know about this stuff, then that's probably going to make sense to you. If not, it'll make sense to you one day. Desiring to achieve Krishna, he did his austerities to the utmost extreme. And now it describes austerities. So it says austerity consists of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They break it down into 5 categories. They say it's tolerance, brevity of speech, restraint, reversing the flow of reproductive energy, and breath control. And let's talk about the relationship between all these things. And what they mean. So the first one is Titikshu, which is tolerance. Tolerance means, for example, it basically means not being bothered. That's what tolerance means. Not being bothered by what? Not being bothered by how people or things treat you. So that's why, for example, he's practicing sitting amidst fire in the summer. That's why he's practicing being in the cold water in the winter. To practice tolerance, or titikshu. And then there's brevity of speech. Brevity of speech means two things. It doesn't just mean speaking minimally, but it also means speaking humbly. Brevity of speech means the reduction of speech, the minimization of your speech. So it means minimizing the forcefulness of it as well as the frequency of it. So when you're performing austerity of speech, it's not just fewer words, but it's gentler words. And that is really difficult. It's kind of easy to reduce your speech to these really harsh, brief, callous barks. No, yes. Okay, go away. Come here. But to be gentle and humble in your speech and also be minimalized in your speech really takes attention and care. So that's what the austerity of speech is. Then there's just something called danta, which is restraint in general. And that's what he was doing with his diet, especially. Now, the remaining three things, and the remaining two things, are very interesting. One thing is called pranayam, which means breath control. And the other thing, okay, so the restraint is the restraint of your activities. And then once your activities are restrained, then you also will restrain even your breathing. So there's breath control. And then there's this fifth item called, which is really interesting, it's called urdhva retas, which is kind of comically misportrayed in certain circles, as there's like some swamis and things will say that you have to make your semen travel up your spine into your brain. So first of all, how the hell is that even possible? And second of all, what if you don't have semen? So obviously that's really not a practical understanding of what urdhva retas means. Although urdhva means upward, and retas in context means, in some contexts, means semen. But what happens is your whole energy of your body is your retas, especially the reproductive energy. And generally, the reproductive energy flows out to do things in the world, to reproduce, or to make things happen in the world. Our energy flows out. But by these austerities, by the controlling of your speech, by practicing tolerance, and by restraining your behavior, and then especially, as you'll find out, by breath control, you stop spending so much energy outward. So the reta ceases to go out. And then what you can do, especially by the breath control, is pull it up. Now, why do they talk about the spine? Because it's energy, and it's flowing up the chakra column so that it can come up to the knowledge chakras in the head and nourish your perceptions. And then you get supercharged perceptivity. basically basic concept behind Kundalini yoga. It's basic. Actually, it's integral to all the types of yoga. So does that make sense? And then this final paragraph, perfecting these practices. What was the result of perfecting the practice or getting Siddhi in these austerities? He became carefree. Isn't that interesting? If you can sit in the cold water in the winter, then you stop worrying about being too cold. If you can sit in the fire in the summer, then you stop worrying about being too hot. If you don't care how the mosquitoes treat you or what your neighbor's saying about you, then you don't care, right? You become carefree and desireless. And by becoming carefree and desireless, you destroy any need for karma. So this is the way to destroy karma. You'll destroy karma at the production end of it, not at the reaction end of it. Karma is produced, and then the reaction produces a fruit. Phala, the phala, Deepika no phala. So the way it is, you can't destroy the phala, you should destroy the plant. You can't destroy the flower or destroy the plant. If you destroy the flower, the plant will make another one. So how do you destroy the plant of karma? You destroy desires, because desires lead to activity. How do you destroy desires? By becoming carefree. Not needing anything. Not needing anything special. Not needing anything that would result from endeavor. The breath control, final sentence, the breath control stopped the normal outward flow of energy, unbinding him from sensual absorption. So when the retas, or the vital energy, flows out through the senses, then it becomes invested in the experiences of the senses, so it becomes sensual. When by breath control the retas is pulled up instead of out, then the vitality in the senses diminishes, and therefore the inspiration to use them decreases. So you get detached from sensual absorption. So one of the important things here is that breath control is really instrumental in this subject of urdhva retas, which is kind of what most, I don't know why I want to say male, but it's definitely a male thing, maybe because it's described as semen so often, but most male practitioners, most male hardcore yogi practitioners, what they're interested in doing is urdhva reta, bringing their power in and up into their perceptive, into their brain, they'll say. But if you don't do breath control, it's kind of hopeless. So that's one little practical hint. So that's what I translated this week. Let's see what you guys got for me in the chat. I have glasses somewhere, right? Wait. I don't need glasses. I must be pulling my reproductive energy up into my eyes. Okay, yeah, you guys are happy that there's another Bhagavatam. Me too. It's kind of cool that it's once a week now. It's more special. Alf, did we sufficiently elaborate upon reversing the flow of reproductive energy? I know a person like Alf would really like that. What did his wife do during this time? Everything that he's doing. The husband and the wife, they act together in Vanaprastha. And the fourth stage, which is called sannyas, the wife and the husband also do the same thing, but they do it separately. And the one difference between male and female in sannyas is that because females have less muscle and they're more fragile. The physical structure of a female is more fragile than the physical structure of a male. So in sannyas, the woman can still keep a shelter, like a hut, but the man can't. The man just has to live under trees and things. That's basically the only difference. But basically she's doing whatever he's doing, she's doing. Alf, what does Kali Yuga mean for good leaders? There's no good leaders in Kali Yuga. The best you can get in Kali Yuga is a not so bad leader. Yeah, that was interesting. Alf mentioned that Dhruva's breath control ceased the ability of everybody to breathe. So this is why Dhruva is remarkable. His austerity was even more fierce than Prithu's. For the phases, Bardo asks, are there any age brackets? Generally, you just divide your life into quarters. But that's a very general understanding, is that you are a student up till about 25. Then you're in your capitalist phase, like the grihastas phase, between 25 and 50. Then you retire from 50 to 75, and then you completely renounce from 75 to 100. That's the general thing. But it's actually different per type of person. So Shudras, actually, they don't spend 25 years learning. Shudras, they can learn by the time they're 8. They don't have to learn that much. They just have to learn the trade. They just need vocational education. Vaishyas also don't need to learn that much. They just need to learn about business. So, and also Shudras can't tolerate Vanaprastha and sannyas as well as the other castes progressively. So the Vanaprastha and the sannyas are shorter. And then also bear in mind that there is no such culture anymore in Kali Yuga, which makes it practically impossible to do this stuff by the letter. So, instead of trying to do anything by the letter, what you should really be doing is just like Prthu. When Prthu went to the forest, the first thing he did was try to deeply understand what the people are doing here, then emulate it. So if you try to deeply understand what this system, Varnashrama is, that's funny, Vanashrama, the forest ashram. The correct pronunciation is Varnashram. If you try to deeply understand what it is, and then you just apply the relevant principles to yourself, you'll be better off than trying to follow literally doing it, because literally doing it, you don't have the environment in which to do it. Where's the forest you're going to go live in? You're going to get arrested. First of all, very simple thing. Second of all, when you go around to do bhikshu, let's say you're Vanaprastha. Okay, you go to collect some fruit, something, you're going to get arrested again. You can't just go pick some vegetables off of somebody's garden. But in Vedic culture, of course you could. The sannyasi is going to go from house to house begging some rice. You're going to do that now. You'll also get arrested. So don't try to emulate the external form of something that's no longer viable. But just because something is no longer viable doesn't mean that the essence of it isn't still eminently relevant. Alf is very interesting. tantric principle. Melissa asks, would direct or downward flow of Retas be rajasic, like creative and libidinous? Yes. Really, Flatlander, the wife and the husband are basically one entity. And the slight difference between the two of them is she's still the wife and he's still the husband. Slightly. They're very much losing their gender now, just like Saturn becomes a non-gendered planet. Just Saturn and Mercury are the two non-gendered planets, Mercury being before puberty and Saturn being after menopause. So the distinction between husband and wife is also reducing a lot. But still, there's a slight thing where, she's more in a supportive role. She's doing what he's doing, but she's supporting him and doing it. That's more of her austerity, actually. The specialty of the wife's austerity is still of like supporting this guy who's trying to do this austerity. But in order to do that, she also does the austerity. And then when it comes to sannyas, they completely separate. All right, so I see those are all the questions. So I'll see you again next Thursday. This is my Thursday. I guess it's Wednesday for most of you. That's funny. One of the words on the YouTube thing is in a different language. Oh no, it's in English. It just got cut off. Sorry to subject you to my babbling and so see you next Thursday for the next group of verses that get translated. Thanks so much.